Okay, so my name is Peter. I have an Apex, and I have over 5,000 kilometers on it now. And I've done a few things to make it virtually zero maintenance. And I want to share that with everyone because I want more people to see how good of a wheel the Apex is. I think it's probably one of the best engineered wheels for the most part that I've seen or used. One of the biggest things I like about it is that I can see every bolt without taking anything apart, and I put a mark on every bolt, and I can see if anything's loosening. I can see if anything's wearing out, and it's very simple, and it works really well. And I think it's overbuilt because I'm 230 pounds, and I don't think I'm easy on it, and it's held up to my abuse for over 5,000 kilometers now, and the suspension is still like new. So here we go. I'll show you what I've done to make it awesome. Okay, so the first thing is, here are the two tools that I use to lubricate my suspension stanchions. Easy peasy, takes a couple of seconds. Here's my process. So I position the wheel this way, and I'll try and get in a position where everyone can see what I'm doing. Okay, so those are my grease holes. So first off, I make sure it's clean, no dirt around them, pretty much clean. I only put them in finger tight. So, whoops, take them out. Then the other side here, which you can't see, by the way, it's the exact same as the side you can see, LOL. So I'm a heavy duty mechanic. So I'm not, I know a little bit about mechanics. And yeah, from my point of view, this wheel is the closest thing to a heavy duty machine that I can see. So I take my syringe with my grease in it, put it in the one hole, fill it. I don't know if you can see, but here, I'll turn it a little bit. I just put in, I don't even know what it is, maybe a cc or so. You'll see it come out the other hole. There, it's just starting to come out. So I pushed it in here. Whoops, I don't know if you can see. In the first hole until it came out that hole. Same thing on this side. There, so little grease I put in. I do that every couple rides, or I mostly do it when I don't see any more fresh white grease coming out. If you do this modification, the most important thing is that you do some test holes, because you got to take it apart, drill the barrel, and then thread it. And you have to stop the threads. You can't just go all the way with the threads, because then your plugs, depending on what type of plugs you use, will just go right through and they won't get tight. So you have to do some test holes with your tap, and the plugs and thread them as far as it takes to stop the plug from going in all the way. Because there's not very much room. Room for the plug to go in before it'll hit the actual rod. So I don't know how long this took, but yeah, it didn't take very long. And my hands were just greasy, so I'm just using the paper towel just to snug them that little bit more. You don't want to over snug them, because if they move in a little tighter every time, there's only like a millimeter or two of space between the inside of the barrel and the outside of the rod. So that's the critical thing. So then I just wipe all the grease off there. And that's it. Okay, so you're probably going to hear the walls and stuff shake. I'm 230 pounds. So if the suspension was worn after 5,000 kilometers, you would hear like some clunking. I'm going back and forth. So here, I'll do this and try not to make the walls shake too much, but at 230 pounds, it's silent. Mine's still silent after over 5,000 kilometers. All you can hear is the air. And the topping out there a little bit. I don't have my rebound set just right. Let's see here, set my rebound a little slower. I usually set it so if I compress it and jump, I don't hear the topping out. Yeah, there we are. So yeah, silent. Okay, so the other thing I did here is you put a 240 millimeter eye-to-eye shock on it. You set it down so you can see my suspension is set to the second lowest position if I had the regular size shock on it. And it's a D&M, so it's 240 millimeters long, which in the sixth position or the second lowest position, the travel starts at 240 in here. So you're not losing any suspension travel, and it makes the suspension more linear, because for my weight with the original setup, it's very harsh because it goes from being very easy to very hard. So now this makes it more linear, so it's easy in the first part, but not as hard in the bottom of the suspension travel. So you get a more linear feel, which is great, and you get to use a lighter spring. I started out with a 500-pound spring, and being 230 pounds, it works pretty good, but I bottom it a little more than I'd liked, but it still bottoms softly, and that's at 230 pounds. So now I have a 750-pound spring in here, and I rarely bottom, and if I do, there's that big rubber stopper there, so it eats up some of your travel, but it makes your bottoms feel seamless. You don't feel it when you bottom out, and you have all that squish of that rubber. So without the rubber, I would get full travel, but then it would bottom harshly. But with the rubber, okay, so first of all, those stoppers in here, if I take the rubber out, because I've gone through quite a few shocks now, my screws hit there, so I know I'm bottoming out. If I leave the rubber in, right there, that rubber, I don't see that, but I don't see the screws hitting there, but I have a really soft bottom. So just to demonstrate that I'm using full travel, see, it's hard to see, but Well, maybe you can see it there. Okay, so see the suspension, it doesn't, how do I say it? I get full travel, because see I'm there all the way. So if I push it down hard, virtually springs back to no travel, see, so I don't get a harsh top out either, but I'm getting full travel with the 240 millimeter shock. So everyone says you don't get full travel on this. If you pick the right shock, you do. What you do need to do to put the shock in, the DMN, I have a short on my channel, hard to see here, but you do have to grind away back in there, this bridge, the bottom part of it, so that the shock doesn't hit. So you have to take the shock out and grind it. That's the only modification you need to do to get the shock to work. So the advantages are, you're using a lighter spring, which is great, because then the shock works better than having a 1,000-pound spring in there. The shock doesn't rub on the sides as much because it's a smaller shock. The suspension is more linear, so it doesn't go from really easy to really hard. It goes from pretty easy to pretty hard. So I think the ratio in the original setup is like 5-to-1 in the beginning and then nearly 1-to-1 at the end. Now it starts out at, I think, 3-to-1 and then gets to 1-to-1 way quicker. So that's why you can put a lighter spring in for a heavier rider than you would with the other one. So essentially, I think the ride height setup for this wheel was a waste or a gimmick, which is never going to be used. I think the linkage should be just for full travel, and probably the more optimum balance between progressiveness and linear, and a linkage that easier utilizes the entire stroke of the suspension. But doing this made it as close to perfect as it can be with the original linkage. Oh, and by the way, yeah, just for shits and giggles, there it is. 5,147 kilometers. So in routing hoses or wiring or anything, you either want it not touching anything, or as tight as possible to what it's touching. So myself, I've put more zip ties in, just to make it tight up against the fender better, so there's no movement, because that micro vibration will wear out the wiring sheath or the wiring insulation. The other thing I found is, hard to see, but see, I put a zip tie right in behind that bolt. Whenever you hit a bump, the motor wire moves back and forth ever so slightly, and that back and forth movement, you can see, maybe you can see, transfers right to there in the on the handle here. So I put a zip tie around there just as a buffer, so that rubbing there is up against the zip tie and not up against the insulation. So as you can see, my zip tie is worn through quite a bit, so that would have been on the insulation rather than on the zip ties. So those, I think, are the main improvements that I've made that make the Apex virtually a maintenance-free killer wheel. And a little bit of a hack or a hint, I think the S22 was inspired this wheel, the Kingsong S22, a little bit. And the suspension with the 750-pound spring is the exact shock that I have in this now. So EVs had a sale before they shut down, and before their shutdown sale, and I saw that they had the old shocks from the S22 in stock, so I bought one, and it's the right length, and a 750 pound spring. So it's the perfect, it's the perfect, it fits perfect. And for my weight, or if you're gonna nail big jumps, this spring, you won't bottom. If I don't bottom hitting big jumps at 230 pounds, or if I do, it's very subtle, then for a lighter person, you could jump off the moon. Well, the other thing I do, which is a good hack, like as for example, the pin bolts here. See how I have a little black mark there? A little black mark there. So now all I gotta do is make sure that those are aligned before every ride, and I know the bolts haven't gone loose. Because let's face it, loosening bolts is a thing on these wheels. Also, see the green on these bolts? They indicate the position of the bolts. And when those green marks don't line up, then you know your bolts have gotten loose. So I do a once over inspection of all my bolts, significant bolts, every time I go out, and I've never had an issue with the bolts coming loose or anything like that. If you have any questions and want to know more about how to get your Apex to work awesome, oh, sorry, I got to say this too. Forgot to say this. The Apex will squeak and creak a whole ton if you don't know where to oil it. Okay, so the stanchions are just one of the many spots where the Apex will creak. It'll creak, shoot, whoops. It'll creak on the jaws, so lubricate those. You'll get that snapping, creaking from there. You'll get creaking or weird scraping sound on the springs against the linkages. You can see the wear marks. So lubricate that with something, and you might have to do it every ride if it's greasy or oily. So that makes a horrible sound when that's rubbing on the linkage. A little bit of grease helps that. So here, and I prefer dry lubes and just lubing it every time, and then all your joints. But I think the jaws and maybe the spring rubbing are probably ones that get overlooked, because I hear a lot of squeaking issues when I hear people riding online. And the spring can make a terrible noise, and this can make that snap, snap, crack, crack, crack sound. So actually, that sound, that's the kickstand, but that doesn't really move when you're riding. So, but that sound, that comes from here in the suspension when you're riding. And there's a rubbing, grinding, loud harmonic sound that comes from the spring rubbing. Anyway, that's all the things I can think of right now. And if you pay attention to those things, your wheel will be sick and last for a long time.